furry companions, love his dogs. So today we thank you for coming. This service held here at this beautiful nature preserve. This heart was in God's creation. This service to mankind, you'll hear words from family. This service to our country. And his love. And my reading from the family, and if you want to read along silently as I read aloud, the words come from 1 Corinthians 13. You've probably seen these at weddings and heard those proclaimed at weddings, but this is also a fitting passage for memorial service. Paul the Apostle wrote to the Corinthians and he said these words, "When I was a child, I talked like a child. I thought like a child. I reasoned as a child. But when I became a man, I put away the childish things behind me. For now we see only a reflection as in a mirror. Then we shall see face to face. Now I know in part, then I shall know fully, even as I am fully known. And now these three remain, faith, hope, and love. But the greatest of these is love." God's three great graces given to us, faith, hope, and love. And Paul says the greatest is love. Let's bow our heads as we have a prayer. Lord, as we gather here today, we ask your blessings upon us. And today we thank you. Thank you for the gifts of faith, hope, and love. The greatest of these is love. Thank you that Bob gave much love and received much love. And thank you for the love that's here today among family and friends. And so we say, we pray your blessings upon us and your presence with us. We thank you for Bob's good life. So we pray your blessings upon us in the name of Jesus Christ. We pray. Amen. Now a special song, Danny Boy.
Wish to thank Ruth, who would come to my father's room frequently to serenade him with his favorite song. A song that my sister Sue would sing to him, but she could not sing it today because the tears would come. But Ruth has been kind enough to do for us what she was so kind to do many times to comfort my dad, and we thank her so much. We thank everyone for coming to celebrate my father's life, our friends, our family, friends of my parents from church and from work in the past, and his special friend, Etta, who gave much joy to his last 2 years of life. My father lived a happy life. He was born in 1926 to a very lucky thing, a loving family. His parents loved each other, and he learned much from them. His father was a World War I veteran who was wounded when he was 18 or 19 and suffered a severe hip wound. It was a desperate fight to save his leg. He got tuberculosis of the bone, and he somehow managed to survive that and walk with a limp. And one of the family treasures is a picture of his wife-to-be, Laura, that he carried in his pocket on the combat field with all its water stains and mud. And he carried it close to his heart, and then he came home and he married her. Laura was an extraordinary person. She was loving and she was interested in everything. She loved reading, she loved music, and I think she instilled in all of her children a great curiosity and love of life. And she was incredibly meaningful to me because of her love of music. And my grandfather instilled in my father his love of service and serving the country. Veterans Affairs were incredibly important to my grandfather as a disabled veteran. And I have, unfortunately, very few memories of my grandfather. He died when I was 6. I remember this sweet, enchanting man who had always given me $1 for a horse every time he came, much to my parents' distress, I'm sure, and hiding behind curtains, waiting to surprise him when he came home. And he reminds me in his pictures of my dad in his later life. So Laura and Bill loved each other, and they had 4 children. Bill was the oldest, and then came Bob, and then sister Patsy, and you'll see pictures of Patsy, Pat, to us in the slideshow. She was a stunningly gorgeous woman with an equally beautiful soul. And then finally the baby of the family, my Uncle Dick, who gives us much joy and shows many characteristics with my father. He was always building something, always had to have a project, and I think that that's something that Dad shared with him. Just the love of creating things and just doing things, and so we're glad to have his family and he here today. Dad was entrepreneurial even before. He started the pharmacy, and before he was old enough to drive, when he was 15, he had a window washing business. This is during the Depression, and managed to save enough to buy his own car before he could get a license. And one of the last times that I saw him, he was laying on his side, and I said, "What you doing, Dad?" And he said, "Oh, I'm having happy memories. Did I ever tell you," which was, he told us so many stories, "but did I ever tell you about my first car? And I painted it blue with yellow trim, and everyone wanted that car." And how he beamed when he talked about that very first car. And my father, as his body became encased in immobility, lived a life where he would remember these memories over and over again, and they would give him great solace. My dad told many stories about World War II, and I'm sure many of them are true. But he did write down many of them over the years and repeat them over and over again. And what strikes us is that it is an optimistic and very happy account of World War II. He felt that it made him into a confident man who could, wanted to attend college. He knew he could do pharmacy school. He wanted to have his own business. From a somewhat shy teenager who was not even 18 when he was enlisted. So he first got a very brief 6 weeks basic training, followed by 2 weeks of artillery training, and then he was in Europe. So he was drafted on his birthday, but he had to leave before to get to Europe at Le Havre about 4 weeks after D-Day. He said that the first thing that was lucky happened in the United States. His name began with an H, and A through J became artillery, and J through Z were infantry. He thought the letter of his name was very lucky. And then he talked about how lucky he was when he landed, because they sent the guns to the wrong place. While everybody was going forward, they had to wait for 3 weeks to catch up with their guns. And yet he was in the Battle of the Bulge, and he was in the battle at Cologne for the Rhone River. And he talks about the rolling artillery fire that was trying to make it safe for our troops to cross the Rhine River. And unfortunately, the bright lights came on, and with anguish about how it took 30 minutes to extinguish them while the infantry got cut to pieces. He was under sniper fire at Cologne. We never knew that. He kept all things unpleasant from his girls. We heard only about happy moments, and for 50 years we did not know that he was at the liberation of Dachau. We never talked about it. Well, World War II ended fortuitously very early, and this very young man had now become a supply sergeant. Again, he had luck. He showed up because his boots wouldn't fit, and they said they needed assistant to the supply sergeant, who promptly got ill, and all of a sudden he was a supply sergeant and providing for 129 men. And after VE Day, he became in charge of POWs. He tells one funny story where we had to get rid of all of our Jeeps, our fire trucks. He said there were Jeeps lined up from here to the horizon that we were getting rid of to ship to the Asian front. And so he set off with some POWs across Germany, and someone had put a canister of nails in the back of the first truck, which promptly came undone, and there were flat tires everywhere. For 50 miles behind them, there were flat tires, and they had stripped all the spare tires off of the trucks, leaving him to go back for spare tires. And what ended up with this series of misadventures, a 6-day trip, what turned into a 2-week trip, and he was in a little bit of hot water because it had taken so long. But he came home. He was a member of the greatest. Oh, one more thing. He came home on the ship troop carrier that had about 10,000 people on it, and they had an epidemic of impetigo. Well, you can imagine how fast that spread. And back then, they thought that this substance, potassium permanganate, could cure impetigo. It had absolutely no effect, but it was bright purple, so they definitely felt like they were doing everything. So after they sequestered all the women, you can imagine 10,000 naked troops painted with purple paint on all their impetigo sores. That must have been quite a sight. And it delayed his homecoming several weeks because this substance had no effect on impetigo, and he had to be in the hospital for a little bit before he could arrive home. And when he arrived home, he was full of energy and optimism, and he went to pharmacy school with his brother Bill, and went on to build a life devoted to family, devoted to his faith, and devoted to his country. And soon after, he met my mother, and Sue's going to tell you about that, the most important thing that happened to him in his life. And he lived a wonderful life. He instilled in us a love of nature, a love of art, because traveling all around Europe, he got to so many art museums, he brought that love back with us and wanted us to have that in our lives, to have travel in our lives. And so he enriched our lives so much. And we thank him for that.
I just I didn't feel that I could sing Danny Boy for you today. Every time I would sing it, he would start weeping happy tears. And I just didn't feel that I would be able to get through it without crying today. But the other song, particularly in the last year or two of his life that we would often sing together, was Ada Weiss. even with his memory loss. He remembered tons of people. He would still remember someone that he met yesterday because of the kind of dementia that he had. And he retained the lyrics for Edelweiss. So that's why I'm going to sing it for you today. Thank you. We are, oh, okay, I just wanted to, yes, we are going to have a slideshow now that was prepared by my sister, Laurel, who is a very talented photographer, and we'd like you to appreciate the slideshow while I play one of his classical pieces, and that would be Claire de Lune. Perhaps I could assist, maybe? This is a different version of PowerPoint. Yes, here it goes. You got it? It's audio-visual training for audio.
No, this isn't the right one.
Let me just, let me give that a go. Since we don't have a special AV person, we'll both.
Oh, I put the wrong one. Yeah. I'm so sorry.
There you go.
pharmacy school, he began a series of jobs. And one of those jobs happened to be at Thompson's Pharmacy, which still exists on Capitol Drive in Shorewood. And in the Christmas of 1950, my mom, who was living with her mom in an apartment on, Wendy, was it Morris? Right. It was Wilson. Wendy's right. They went to Thompson's Pharmacy to buy a Christmas tree. Well, as the story goes, my dad saw my mom enter the pharmacy, and he made a beeline from behind the pharmacy up to my mom and her mom to see if there was anything that he could do to help them out. Well, they didn't have a way to get that Christmas tree back to their apartment other than dragging it. So he volunteered to assist them with this task. 4 days later, he proposed, and she accepted. So apparently he knew a good thing when he saw it. Now, he continued to work for what was then the only game in town, small independent pharmacies. And he was working at a pharmacy, I believe it was on Downer, that it was he and the owner were the only pharmacists. And the pharmacist's wife did not like him, made it really clear to him that she did not like him. And one day she decided to fire him. Didn't talk to her husband about it, just walked up to him and fired him. And Dad started packing up. The owner of the pharmacy was rather dismayed to learn this. He hadn't been able to take any vacation. And so the owner of the pharmacy paid for his vacation, paid him severance pay, and paid him, I believe, a bonus for putting up with the grief he put up with. So between those three things, and my parents had been living frugally, they were able to put a down payment on Brown Deer Pharmacy, which was then on what is now Deerwood Drive, across from Larry's Brown Deer Market. And Dad felt very fortunate that he was able to, with that down payment, and they took out the ice cream and soda fountain and found several $100s in change that people had dropped. And they saved that up. And they went to Yarland, which was a drug wholesaler, and said, we need your help. We want to open a pharmacy. And Yarland stocked the pharmaceutical shelves for them on his signature. He felt very fortunate that he was able to take what to most people would have been devastating and dismaying, I'm fired, and turn it into an opportunity. And that pharmacy supported our family for more than 40 years. They finally closed it in 1995. But during the time that it was open, I remember many times that, back in the day before 24-hour pharmacies, someone would call that pharmacy number at 1 o'clock in the morning because they'd just been released from the emergency room. And my dad would get up and go to the pharmacy and fill that prescription. And sometimes we would go out to dinner and he would tell the answering service, hey, I'm going to be at the Black Kettle. And they would call us at the Black Kettle. And he'd leave dinner and go fill that prescription. He loved what he did. I think primarily what he loved about it was the people. He loved talking to people, telling stories, and telling jokes. To the point where, I know Wendy and Heidi can concur with this, that he would tell the same joke about every 10 minutes. As the audience switched over and new customers came in and old customers left. And you had to laugh every single time, even though you may have heard it 30 times already, because he loved making people smile, even if they weren't feeling good. Now, something that the pharmacy allowed him to do was take what he had learned during World War II, and he exposed us to travel. He would get so excited. We generally took road trips in a station wagon, whichever one we had at the time. And he would encourage us to go to bed early and say to us, now we're going to get up at 4 or 5 in the morning because I want to get around Chicago before rush hour. And about midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning, he couldn't sleep. He was so excited about going. He would get us all out of bed in our pajamas and load us up in the wagon, and we would go because he couldn't wait to start the journey. On those journeys, we did see a lot of art museums, but there was also a trip to New York to see theater, and there was plenty of theater that he gave us the opportunity to see here. For many years, they held season tickets at Melody Top, which was a tent theater that existed on Good Hope Road near 76th Street. And we all were fortunate enough to be able to go to at least one musical. He made it very clear that it was for him, Mom, and whoever else he wanted to bring along, but we got to go to at least one of those musicals a year. And to this day, I still have a love of musicals that I think sometimes drives other people crazy. Dad worked hard, and he realized about the time that I turned 12 that he needed to spend more time with his daughters. It wasn't at all unusual, particularly in the young part of my life, for him to work 9 to 9 Monday through Saturday, and then 9 to 6 on Sunday. And Mom would keep us up late so that we could see him for a few minutes before we went to bed. But it was when I turned 12 that he decided it was time that he really got to know his daughters. And we started taking camping trips, mostly to the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, where he would share with us his love of birds and nature and his excitement in seeing a loon or a bald eagle. And we would occasionally attempt fishing, which we were all horrible at. But it was fun to be with him. He was lucky, along with my mom, enough to buy a house on the Milwaukee River that just happened to be at